Imagine doing exactly what society tells you to do.
Right, the whole blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. You get the good grades, you secure a safe, respectable job with, a solid benefits package.
You work late, you put in the hours.
You buy the nice three-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Basically, you check every single box on the universally accepted list for successful life.
And yet?
And yet, somehow you're sitting at the kitchen table late at night, staring at a stack of bills, and you feel like you are you're one missed paycheck away from a total crisis.
Or one blown transmission.
Exactly. One unexpected medical bill and the whole house of cards comes down. So the question is, why does following all the rules leave so many smart, hardworking people feeling incredibly stressed and just completely stuck?
It's really the great unspoken paradox of modern life. I mean, we are conditioned from childhood to believe that compliance with this traditional path equals security.
Yep.
But for millions of people, that supposed security feels an awful lot like a highly polished trap. We do everything right, but the math at the end of the month simply never seems to work in our favor.
It's exhausting. And that feeling of being tracked, that relentless cycle of working just to survive despite doing everything right, is exactly what we are dismantling today in this deep dive.
Oh, we are definitely getting into it today.
Yeah, we are taking a magnifying glass to the foundational concepts of a massively influential and, I should add, highly polarizing personal finance philosophy.
Yes, very polarizing.
We're pulling directly from the classic source text, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And the material we are unpacking outlines the glaring, almost uncomfortable differences between traditional financial advice and the actual habits of the wealthy.
And it is crucial to frame this properly right out of the gate because the sources we are analyzing do not pull their punches.
Not at all.
They contain very strong, deliberately provocative opinions. The framework takes aim at the traditional education system. It has very specific, aggressive viewpoints on taxation and government policy.
It fundamentally challenges the value of traditional employment, really.
Exactly. And our mission here is not to endorse these libertarian-leaning views, nor are we acting as your financial advisors.
Right, definitely not financial advisors.
Rather, we are impartially unpacking these fascinating theories, the psychological frameworks, and the raw financial mechanics presented in the text. We want to give you, the listener, a completely different lens through which to view money.
So you can decide for yourself what holds value for your own life. And we are going to cover a lot of ground today. We'll explore how the wealthy literally create money using legal frameworks.
Which sounds like magic, but it's not.
Right, it's just mechanics.
Oh.
We're going to break down the exact steps beginners can take to change their trajectory right now, and we'll map out the ultimate blueprint for escaping what the text so famously calls the rat race.
The rat race. It's such a visceral term.
It really is. But before we talk about the mechanics of what to do with your money, we really have to look at how we actually think about it. And the text sets this up brilliantly through a narrative conflict.
The tale of two dads.
Yeah, it's the story of a young boy growing up, heavily influenced by two powerful father figures who just possess diametrically opposed views on how the world operates.
And this foundational metaphor is the anchor of the entire philosophy. On one side of the spectrum, you have the poor dad. And it is vital to understand that the label poor in this context does not mean uneducated, unmotivated, or lazy.
Oh, quite the opposite.
Right. The poor dad is highly educated. He is an academic overachiever, a PhD who finished a 4-year undergraduate degree in less than 2 years.
Which is wild.
He went to Stanford, Chicago, Northwestern. He is a hardworking, highly respected government employee in the education sector.
So he is basically the poster child for what society tells us we should aspire to be. He's the guy who followed the blueprint to the letter.
Precisely. But his catchphrases, the language he uses daily, reveal a very specific mindset. He frequently says things like, "The love of money is the root of all evil."
Classic trace.
Right. And when faced with a luxury or a desire, his default response is always, "I can't afford it." His ultimate advice to his son is, study hard to find a good company to work for.
And above all else, his guiding principle is to play it safe.
Yes, play it safe. Always.
But then, sitting right across the ideological table, you have the rich dad. And this man is an 8th grade dropout. He never finished his formal traditional education.
None of it.
Yet, through sheer grit and a totally different kind of intelligence, he went on to become one of the wealthiest men in his state. And his catchphrases are the exact mirror inverse of the poor dad's.
They really are. Instead of money being the root of all evil, the rich dad argues, The lack of money is the root of all evil.
Which flips the whole moral argument on its head.
Exactly. And instead of resigning himself to, I can't afford it, he forcefully asks, how can I afford it? Instead of studying to find a good company to work for, his advice is, study hard to buy a good company.
Buy the company, don't just work for it.
Right. And instead of playing it safe, his mantra is, learn to manage risk.
What's most fascinating here, I think, is synthesizing these two worldviews to find the root divergence. Because it's not about their starting income or their initial bank balances. It's entirely about their psychological relationship with security and risk.
Oh, absolutely. The poor dad, despite his incredible education, fundamentally relies on the state and his employer for his security.
Right, there's an underlying entitlement mentality there.
Yeah, the deeply ingrained idea that if I do good work, if I follow the rules, the government or the corporation owes me a pension, comprehensive health care, and a safe retirement.
Whereas the rich dad demands total financial self-reliance.
Yeah.
He actually believes that relying on an employer or a government for your lifelong security is a massive, terrifyingly unrecognized risk.
He thinks it's the riskiest thing you can do.
I want to push on that language aspect you mentioned because the text highlights a tangible example of this mindset difference that I just found incredibly profound. It's about how they handle financial hurdles.
The I can't afford it versus how can I afford it dynamic.
Exactly. Poor dad says, I can't afford it. If you think about the mechanics of that phrase, it's like turning off a car's engine. The moment you say, I can't afford it, your brain just stops working.
It just shuts down.
Right. It accepts the present reality as an unchangeable law of physics. You feel a momentary ping of sadness, but then you're off the hook. You don't have to do any actual work.
You've absolved yourself of the responsibility.
Yeah. But Rich Dad outright forbade those words in his house. He insisted on asking, how can I afford it? And that is like stepping on the gas. It forces your brain, which the text calls the world's most powerful computer, to wake up.
It has to start running scenarios and finding creative solutions.
Yes.
That is an excellent way to frame it. It's the difference between a declarative statement, which closes the mind, and an interrogative question, which pries the mind open.
It really does pry it open.
And if we connect this to the broader psychological picture, it demonstrates how our language literally shapes our reality. Poor dad constantly vocalized, I'll never be rich, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
His thoughts dictated his actions.
Or lack thereof, yeah. Which ultimately dictated his financial reality. Rich Dad, on the other hand, even when he was completely broke and millions of dollars in debt after a major real estate setback, still steadfastly referred to himself as a rich man.
That part always gets me. Millions in debt, but still says he's rich.
Because he famously noted, broke is temporary, poor is eternal. He understood that wealth is a state of mind, an orientation toward problem solving, long before it is a state of a bank account.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Isn't there a danger in that? I mean, if someone is genuinely drowning in debt, working a minimum wage job, and they just walk around saying, I'm rich, how can I afford this Ferrari? Isn't that just toxic positivity or straight up delusion?
It's a very fair critique. If the mental shift isn't paired with an action shift, then yes, it is pure delusion.
Right. You can't just manifest a Ferrari by thinking about it.
Exactly. The point the source material is making isn't about magical thinking. It's about shifting from a passive victim mentality to an active problem-solving mentality.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Asking how can I afford it doesn't mean you go put the Ferrari on a high-interest credit card. It means you look at your income, you look at the price of the car, and your brain starts asking, what new skills would I need to acquire?
What business do I need to build?
What investments would I need to make to generate that kind of capital? It is about initiating the process of financial engineering rather than accepting financial stagnation.
So it's really about recognizing that the default settings we've been programmed with might be faulty. It forces a pretty uncomfortable self-audit for you, the listener.
Very uncomfortable.
What scripts are running in the background of your own mind right now? When you look at something you want or a life you want to build, does your brain automatically default to the safe, comfortable shutdown of, I can't afford it?
Or do you force yourself to ask how?
It's a tiny linguistic pivot, but according to this philosophy, it is the exact divergence point between two completely different lives.
And this philosophical divergence isn't just something the rich dad preached hypothetically over dinner. It was something he actively and rather harshly orchestrated for his son and his son's friend Mike to experience firsthand.
Right. Because it is one thing to hear these catchphrases, But how do you actually teach the grit of financial self-reliance to a 9-year-old kid?
You put them to work.
Yeah. This transitions us to the story of the first literal lesson in the text. And honestly, looking at it through a modern lens, it's pretty wild.
It would probably cause an uproar today.
Oh, definitely. So the boys go to Rich Dad, who is Mike's father, and say, teach us how to be rich.
Yeah.
So what does he do? Does he give them a book on economics?
Yep.
No. He puts them to work in one of his convenience stores, dusting canned goods and sweeping floors for 3 hours every Saturday, paying them a measly 10 cents an hour.
It was exhausting, tedious, mind-numbing work for practically zero pay. He was intentionally replicating the worst aspects of the traditional employment grind.
Just to prove a point.
Exactly. And predictably, after a few weeks of giving up his Saturdays for 30 cents, the 9-year-old gets incredibly angry. He feels exploited, undervalued, and cheated.
As he should. I'd be furious.
So he demands a meeting with Rich Dad. Fully prepared to quit or demand a substantial raise, he goes into the office, confronts this wealthy man, and says, "You are exploiting me. You aren't teaching me anything. You need to pay me more or I'm walking."
And Rich Dad just sits back, smiles, and says, you sound exactly like most of my employees. Now you are finally ready to learn.
It's such a brutal punchline.
It is. Rich Dad doesn't give him a raise. He doesn't apologize. He actually takes away the 10 cents and tells the boy that if he wants to learn how to be rich, he now has to work for free.
Which, on its face, seems entirely counterintuitive, almost punitive. Why make a child work for free when they are asking to learn about money?
It feels mean.
It does. But because if he gave in and paid them more, if he bumped them up to 25 cents or $1 an hour, he would be teaching them that the solution to financial dissatisfaction is simply to demand a bigger paycheck from an employer.
He'd be training them to be employees.
He would be training them to become addicted to the wage. And the paycheck, as Rich Dad explains to the boys, is the ultimate carrot for the donkey.
Okay, let's unpack the donkey and the carrot metaphor, because it perfectly encapsulates what we were talking about at the very beginning, that feeling of being trapped.
The visual is powerful. Imagine a donkey pulling a heavy wooden cart down a dusty road all day long. Why is it doing that?
Because the owner is dangling a carrot on a stick just a few inches in front of its nose.
Right. The donkey is chasing the illusion of a reward. It keeps moving. It expends massive amounts of energy, but it never actually catches the carrot. And more importantly, the donkey never gets anywhere on its own terms.
It just pulls the owner's cart.
Exactly. Tomorrow, there will just be another carrot and another day of pulling.
And the human equivalent of that heavy cart is what the text defines as the rat race.
Yes.
It's waking up, drinking your coffee, sitting in awful traffic, and going to work to get the money to pay the rent and the credit card bill. Then maybe you get a raise. You get a slightly bigger carrot.
So what do you do with that bigger carrot?
Buy a slightly bigger house or lease a nicer car, which means you have bigger bills. So you work harder, maybe take on a second job or angle for a promotion, get another raise, buy more stuff, and repeat the cycle until you retire or die.
And the source argues that this entire exhausting cycle is driven by two primal, almost subconscious emotions: fear and greed.
Let's break those two emotions down analytically because they really form the engine of the rat race.
Okay, first, there is the fear. The fear of not having money, the fear of eviction, the fear of starving, or even just the fear of falling behind your peers.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. That fear wakes you up in the morning and sends you to a job you might actively despise. You put in your hours, you get the paycheck, and the fear momentarily subsides. You can pay the rent.
But the moment the fear drops, the second emotion takes over. Greed, or more accurately in modern terms, desire.
Right, because greed sounds malicious, but desire is just wanting nice things.
Yeah, you have a few extra dollars in your pocket, and suddenly you start desiring the things money can buy. You see an advertisement for a vacation, a new phone, a better restaurant, so you spend the money to satisfy that desire.
And the moment the money is gone, what rushes back in?
The fear.
The fear of not having money returns, sending you right back to the office on Monday morning. Fear, desire, fear, desire. It is a closed psychological loop that dictates human behavior, and most people never realize they're caught in it.
I think about how modern technology has completely weaponized that desire side of the loop.
Oh, absolutely. Social media is an accelerant.
It's not just seeing your neighbor's new car anymore. It's opening Instagram or TikTok and seeing thousands of people living seemingly perfect, luxurious lives. The baseline for what we desire has been artificially inflated to an impossible standard.
Which means we spend money faster.
which means the fear comes back faster.
That is an excellent modern contextualization. The treadmill is moving faster today than it ever has. And the profound tragedy of this, as the text points out, is that it doesn't just apply to minimum wage workers or people struggling below the poverty line.
Not at all.
You have highly paid, highly educated professionals, surgeons, corporate lawyers, senior engineers who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they are still completely, hopelessly trapped in the rat race.
Let's build a profile of that person to really illustrate this, because I think a lot of people assume that a high salary equals wealth.
It's a very common misconception.
Right, so imagine a doctor. Let's call him Dr. Smith. He makes $400,000 a year. To most people, Dr. Smith is rich.
By most metrics, he is.
But let's look at his life. He felt the need to buy a $1.5 million McMansion in the best school district, so his mortgage and property taxes are astronomical. He and his spouse both drive $90,000 luxury SUVs on lease.
Don't forget the private schools.
Yes, they take 3 expensive vacations a year, and their kids go to private schools that cost $30,000 a year each. Dr. Smith is generating massive income, but his expenses instantly rose to match and even exceed his income.
If Dr. Smith stops working for 3 months, his entire empire collapses.
Completely. He is pulling a much heavier, much more gilded cart, but he is still just a donkey chasing a carrot.
Which brings us back to the 9-year-old boy working for free. How does working for 0 cents an hour teach you to escape the fate of Dr. Smith?
Yeah, what was Rich Dad's angle there?
Rich Dad wanted the boys to forcibly detach their labor from a direct, immediate monetary reward. He wanted them to feel the discomfort of working without the soothing balm of a paycheck.
He told them, the poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them.
His theory was that the moment you stop reacting out of fear of not having a paycheck and you stop letting desire dictate your every action, your mind clears.
The panic subsides.
And in that clarity, you can step back and start seeing opportunities that everyone else who was blinded by the frantic chase for the next paycheck completely misses.
And the crazy thing is, it actually worked for the boys. While they were working for free in the store, no longer obsessing over their missing 10 cents, they noticed something.
They saw the comic books.
They saw that the store manager was taking the unsold, outdated comic books, ripping the top half of the covers off to send back to the distributor for credit, and throwing the rest of the comic book in the trash.
Because they weren't focused on a wage, they saw an asset.
Exactly. They asked the distributor if they could keep the discarded comics. They took them, set up a makeshift library in Mike's basement, hired Mike's younger sister for $1 a week to act as the librarian.
Smart move.
Very smart. And they charged the neighborhood kids 10 cents admission to read as many comics as they wanted in 2 hours.
It was a masterstroke of early entrepreneurialism. They created a system. They leveraged a discarded inventory, hired cheap labor, and generated a recurring revenue stream.
Suddenly, they had created a business that generated money for them, whether they were physically in the basement or not. They were making money work for them.
Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I feel like we have to mention that their very first attempt to make money before the comic book library was a little less sophisticated.
And highly, highly illegal.
Ah, yes. The infamous lead nickels.
It's such a funny, illuminating anecdote in the source text. The boys literally tried to manufacture money. They went around the neighborhood collecting used toothpaste tubes, which were actually made of lead back in those days.
Which is terrifying in its own right.
Truly. They melted the lead down in a pot over a fire and poured the molten metal into the plaster of Paris molds they had made of real nickels. They were counterfeiting.
Literal counterfeiting.
The poor dad came out, saw what they were doing, and had to sit them down and explain that counterfeiting was a federal crime that could land them in prison. But Rich Dad's reaction when he heard about it was entirely different.
He didn't scold them.
Not at all. He loved the initiative. He loved that they were trying to create value. He just chuckled and told them they needed to find a legal way to do it.
And that transition from literal counterfeiting of physical coins to creating a conceptual, system-based business like the comic book library represents the fundamental shift from a physical understanding of money to a conceptual one.
Right. But to truly escape the rat race as an adult, the source material argues that enthusiasm and entrepreneurial spirit aren't enough.
No, you can't just rely on a good work ethic.
You need a very specific, technical type of knowledge.
Yeah.
You need financial literacy, which brings us to what the text essentially positions as the holy grail of wealth.
Because if earning a massive salary like Dr. Smith doesn't get you out of the rat race, what does?
The answer is understanding the fundamental underlying mechanics of wealth. And the source boils this down to rule number 1. In fact, it emphatically states that this is the only rule you need.
The golden rule.
You must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and you must spend your life buying assets.
It sounds almost insultingly simple, doesn't it? Buy assets, don't buy liabilities.
It does. But the text argues that the vast majority of financial struggle and anxiety in the world comes from people, even highly educated people, not actually knowing the difference between the two.
And part of the problem is the financial industry itself. Traditional accounting practices, banking jargon, and complex financial products make these definitions purposely opaque.
It's like they don't want you to understand it.
It often feels that way. But the rich dad philosophy strips away all the institutional jargon and provides a ruthlessly simple binary definition based purely on cash flow.
Let's break those definitions down. ELI 5, explain like I'm 5.
Okay, simple definitions.
According to this framework, an asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That is the entire litmus test.
Whether you are working, sleeping, or on vacation, an asset feeds you cash, and a liability eats your cash.
To visualize this, the text uses incredibly simple mental diagrams to map out the cash flow of different economic classes. Imagine a piece of paper. At the top, you have an income statement with 2 boxes. Income and expenses.
And below that, you have a balance sheet with 2 more boxes, assets and liabilities.
Right. For someone struggling in poverty, the cash flow is a straight, short line. Money comes into the income box from a minimum wage job and goes straight out the expense box for rent, cheap food, and basic transportation.
There is nothing in the asset box, and rarely anything in the liability box because they usually can't get credit. It is pure hand-to-mouth survival.
Then you have the cash flow of the middle class, which is where the illusion of wealth traps people. Money comes into the income box from a solid professional job. But instead of just paying basic expenses, the money flows down into the liabilities box.
They use their good credit to buy a new car on a loan.
Exactly. Or they rack up credit card debt on furniture and vacations. They take out a massive mortgage on a house. These liabilities then generate heavy monthly expenses, interest payments, taxes, maintenance, that flow right out of the expense box.
They think they are building wealth because they possess physical items like a house and cars, but mechanically they are just building a very efficient machine that constantly drains their income.
And finally, you have the cash flow pattern of the wealthy. For the truly rich, the primary source of money originates in the asset box, not the income box.
Their real estate generates monthly rental checks. Their stocks generate quarterly dividends.
Their bonds generate interest, or intellectual property, like a book or a patent, generates royalties. That money flows up into the income box.
The rich do not rely on a salary from an employer to fund your life. They rely on the autonomous cash flow generated by their assets.
Okay, I have to step in here and push back hard on behalf of the listener, because the text makes a point right here that is going to shock and probably anger a lot of people.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
The book famously and highly controversially declares, your house is not an asset.
Yes?
When I first read that, my brain short-circuited. Literally every financial planner, every parent, every piece of cultural wisdom tells us that buying a home is your greatest asset, your ultimate investment.
The cornerstone of the American dream?
Yes. How on earth does the source justify tearing down that foundational belief? Are they really saying buying a house is a mistake?
It is absolutely the most polarizing point in the entire philosophy, and we need to examine the mechanics of why the author says this. It makes perfect sense if and only if you rigidly stick to their strict definition. Does it put money in your pocket today or take it out?
Right, the cat flow test.
When you buy a large primary residence, you're taking a massive amount of capital, your down payment, and locking it away in drywall and wood. Then, every single month for 30 years, that house takes money out of your pocket.
You pay the mortgage, which is mostly interest to the bank in the early years.
You pay property taxes to the city, you pay homeowners insurance, you pay for a new roof when it leaks, a new water heater when it bursts.
So by the text's cash flow definition, a primary residence is undeniably a liability. It eats your cash.
But hold on, let me give the classic counter-argument. What about appreciation? My grandmother bought her house in California for $30,000 in 1975, and she sold it last year for $1.2 million.
Oh, wow.
How can you look at that math and tell me her house wasn't an asset?
I mean, that's a massive return.
It is, and it involves understanding the difference between cash flow and capital gains. A capital gain is the difference between what you paid for an asset and what you sell it for. Yes, your grandmother experienced massive capital appreciation.
But here's the catch.
She didn't see a single dime of that money for 40 years until she sold it. In the meantime, for those 4 decades, she had to pay property taxes, maintenance, and insurance out of her own pocket.
The house wasn't feeding her, she was feeding the house.
Furthermore, the text points out the hidden, silent killer of wealth, opportunity cost.
Let's explain opportunity cost for someone who might not be familiar with the economic term.
Opportunity cost is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. If you take $100,000 of your savings and tie it up in a down payment for a massive house to live in, you have no liquid money left.
You can't use that $100,000 to buy a duplex that you rent out to tenants.
You cannot put it into a high-yield index fund. You miss out on years, potentially decades, of compound interest and active investment experience because all your capital is trapped in the house you sleep in.
So the text isn't necessarily saying never buy a house.
No, not at all. It is saying do not fool yourself into thinking the house you live in is an income-generating asset. It is an expense. Buy it because you want to live there, but don't count it as your wealth-building engine.
That distinction between cash flow and capital gains is huge. And it brings us right back to why Dr. Smith, our hypothetical high earner, is stressed out and broke.
It's what the book calls the escalation of the tax bracket combined with lifestyle creep.
Dr. Smith gets a promotion. He makes more money. What does he do? He immediately upgrades from a nice $400,000 house to a $1.5 million house.
His property taxes triple.
His mortgage quadruples.
Yep.
His utility bills double. He is generating massive income, but he is compulsively buying liabilities that he falsely thinks are assets. And those new liabilities instantly devour every single extra dollar he earns.
He works harder just to feed his liabilities.
What is truly fascinating here, and what the source text zeroes in on, is the systemic failure that allows this to happen. Why does this happen to incredibly smart, capable people?
Because our educational institutions are designed to teach academic skills and professional skills. They teach you how to analyze literature, how to perform surgery, how to engineer a bridge.
But they teach absolutely zero financial skills.
People graduate from a decade of grueling higher education, completely unable to read a basic financial statement. They don't fundamentally know the difference between an asset and a liability.
So they spend their entire adult lives working tirelessly for money, only to hand it over to banks and corporations in exchange for liabilities.
So if you are listening to this on your commute and you want to truly build wealth, your life's mission becomes incredibly simple to define, even if it takes immense discipline to execute.
You must spend your life acquiring assets. Think of it this way. Every single dollar that you save and put into your asset column is no longer just a piece of paper or a digital number. It becomes your employee.
It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It never asks for a sick day. It never needs a vacation. And its only job in the world is to go out and make more dollars. You just keep building that invisible army of employees.
And this brings up a very valid practical hurdle. It's the most common pushback to this philosophy.
Yeah. How do you actually do it?
If you are supposed to be out there buying all these assets, but you are currently stuck in a regular 9-to-5 job, paying rent, buying groceries, and just trying to keep your head above water, how do you actually afford to start acquiring real estate or stock portfolios?
How do you build that army of dollars while still putting food on the table for your family?
Which leads us perfectly into the next major concept, minding your own business and the immense power of corporate structures.
And to explain this, the text uses a brilliant, real-world story about Ray Kroc, the legendary founder who turned McDonald's into a global empire.
Such a great story.
It really is. The story goes that Kroc is giving a guest lecture to a group of MBA students at the University of Texas. It's a great session, and afterwards they all go out to a local bar for some beers.
Kroc, holding his drink, looks at these brilliant business students and asks, "Who here can tell me what business I am in?"
And the students all laugh, assuming it's a rhetorical joke. Finally, one of the braver students speaks up and says, "Ray, everyone in the world knows you are in the hamburger business."
And Kroc corrects them, completely deadpan. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in the hamburger business. My business is real estate."
It is a profound, paradigm-shifting distinction.
McDonald's as a corporation was certainly organized around selling franchises that sold hamburgers. But Kroc's genius, the financial intelligence of the operation, was realizing that the real wealth was not in the meat and potatoes.
It was in the land underneath the restaurant.
The local franchisee was paying for the right to sell the hamburgers, but they were also locked into paying a lease on the prime real estate that Kroc's overarching company owned. The hamburger was just the bait to get the franchisee to pay the mortgage on the asset.
And the source material uses this story to highlight a massive point of confusion for most people.
Yeah.
We constantly confuse our profession with our business.
Yes.
Your profession is what you do to pay your bills. You are a banker, a software engineer, a chef, a mechanic. That is your profession. It funds your daily survival.
But your business is your asset column.
The text offers a very pragmatic piece of advice here. Keep your day job. Do not quit in a blaze of glory. Be a great, hardworking employee, but start minding your own business.
Stop spending all your extra discretionary income on liabilities, like a slightly newer car or a bigger TV, and start funneling it into your asset column.
If we connect this to the bigger macroeconomic picture, minding your own business requires an understanding of how the system is constructed. And I use the term constructed analytically here, not as a conspiracy.
Right, looking at the history.
The text provides a fascinating, albeit specific, history of taxes to explain this dynamic. It notes that originally, in places like England and the early United States, there were no permanent income taxes.
When they were introduced, they were sold to the voting public using a Robin Hood narrative. We are only going to tax the ultra-wealthy to provide for the masses.
The public voted for these taxes because they assumed they would never have to pay them.
Tax the rich, it won't affect me.
Exactly. But governments grow, bureaucracies expand, and their appetite for revenue is insatiable. So who did the tax burden ultimately fall on? It didn't stay on the rich.
It crept down and fell squarely on the middle class and the upper middle class, the doctors, the lawyers, the managers.
The Robin Hood theory backfired completely on the people who voted for it.
Exactly. And why did it backfire? Why don't the ultra-rich carry the heaviest percentage burden of income tax? It is not because they are doing anything illegal. It is because the rich understand the law and they utilize legal government-sanctioned structures to protect their wealth.
The primary, most powerful structure they use is the corporation.
Now, when the average person hears the word corporation, they imagine a massive glass skyscraper in Manhattan with a glowing logo on top and thousands of employees bustling around.
But the text points out something mind-blowing for the uninitiated. A corporation isn't necessarily a building or a massive workforce.
No, it is often literally just a file folder sitting in a filing cabinet in an attorney's office registered with the state government.
Wait, just a folder, like in a lawyer's office.
Exactly. It is simply a legal entity. It is a set of documents that creates a legal person or body that is entirely separate from you as an individual.
And the wealthy use these file folders to play the game of capitalism by an entirely different set of rules, specifically regarding taxation and liability.
Let's break down the mathematical formula of how this works, because it is the most unfair-sounding, completely legal reality of the financial world.
Okay, let's look at how an employee, a normal W-2 wage earner, is taxed. Here's the formula. You earn money. The government immediately takes its cut in taxes out of your paycheck before you even see it.
And then you try to survive and spend whatever meager amount is left over.
The formula is earn, tax, spend.
Now look at the corporation, which is the vehicle the wealthy operate through. The corporation earns money. Then the corporation spends everything it legally can on business expenses.
Wait, so they spend before taxes?
Yes, this can include portions of rent, travel for business, business dinners, vehicles used for the company, health insurance, and legal fees.
Pre-tax.
And finally, the government only gets to tax whatever net profit is left over after all those expenses are paid. The formula is inverted. Earn, spend, tax.
It is a totally inverted reality. The employee pays taxes on their gross income, front-loading the government. The corporation pays taxes on its net income after it has funded the owner's operational lifestyle through legal pre-tax business expenses.
As the text explicitly states, the rich aren't evading the rules like criminals. They're simply utilizing the legal incentives that the government put in place, rules that the middle class completely ignores.
Now, I know we mentioned pushing back on this earlier, and it is a crucial point of debate. Many people hear this and feel a deep sense of moral outrage. They ask, isn't this just the rich dodging their fair share of the burden? while the working class pays for the roads and schools.
Exactly. It feels like a massive legalized loophole. Why does the government allow a corporation to deduct a dinner or a car, but a regular guy can't deduct his commute?
To remain impartial here, we have to look at the economic theory behind the tax code. The government uses the tax code not just to collect revenue, but to incentivize specific behaviors that it believes grow the economy.
The government wants cheap housing, so it gives massive tax breaks to real estate developers.
The government wants job creation, so it gives tax deductions to businesses that expand and hire people. The tax code isn't just a penalty, it is a map.
It is the government saying, if you do these things, build houses, create jobs, provide energy, we will reward you by taking less of your money.
The rich simply read the map and do what the government is incentivizing. Employees, on the other hand, only provide labor, which the government taxes at the highest rate because it is the most abundant resource.
That reframing is wild. The tax code is a map of incentives. So this raises a really heavy question for you, the listener, to ponder the next time you look at your pay stub.
When you see all those deductions, federal tax, state tax, Social Security, Medicare, who are you actually making rich?
You are essentially working from January to May just to pay the government. Then you take your after-tax money and you work to pay the bank the interest on your mortgage and your credit cards. You work to make the owners of your company wealthy.
How much of your labor, of your precious limited time on this earth, is actually working for you?
It forces a stark realization. If you are operating solely as an individual W-2 employee, you are the most heavily taxed entity in the entire economic system.
To mind your own business effectively and protect the assets you're trying to build, the text strongly suggests educating yourself on how to utilize the power of a corporation or an LLC. Not just to minimize your tax burden legally, but to protect your hard-earned assets from catastrophic lawsuits.
Okay, so we have established the grained philosophy. We know the difference between assets and liabilities. We know we need to keep our day job but start building an asset column. And we know we need to use legal structures like corporations to defend that wealth.
But this brings us to a massive practical roadblock. You have your day job, you are keeping your expenses low, and you are diligently trying to buy assets. But let's be real. Saving $200 or $300 a month from a middle-class salary is a painfully slow path to wealth.
It could take 40 years.
How do the wealthy accelerate this process? Where do they get the big, massive chunks of capital to rapidly expand their asset column without waiting decades?
We are now entering the most mind-bending and arguably the most advanced concept in the entire source text. It is the idea that the rich do not work for money, the rich invent money.
That phrase sounds like either magic or a felony, inventing money.
It requires a complete paradigm shift regarding what money actually is. Most of us are taught that money is a physical, hard reality. It is coins, bills, gold bars. It represents intrinsic value.
But the rich dad philosophy argues that fiat money is not real. It is merely a social agreement. It is an illusion, exactly like the carrot dangling in front of the donkey.
The moment you realize that money is essentially a conceptual agreement between humans, you realize that it can be created conceptually. Therefore, the single most powerful asset we have is not a stock portfolio or a piece of commercial real estate. It is our mind.
I want to break this down with a highly specific example from the text, because when I read this, the abstract idea of inventing money finally clicked into a tangible, mechanical reality for me.
The real estate example.
Yes, the author talks about a time when the real estate market in Phoenix, Arizona was completely depressed. The economy was bad, everyone was terrified, the news was entirely negative, the Chicken Littles of the world were screaming that the sky was falling.
But where the masses saw fear and retreated, he saw an opportunity to invent money.
He found a house that was foreclosed on, and the bank was desperate to offload it. They wanted $60,000 for it. She analyzed it and offered them $50,000.
But here is the crucial mechanical detail. He did not use $50,000 of his own hard-earned savings to buy it. He didn't have the money sitting in a checking account.
Exactly. This is the magic trick. He borrowed a small amount of money from a friend or secured a short-term cashier's check, which is basically a guaranteed check from a bank, just to give the seller what is called earnest money.
This shows the bank he is a serious buyer and allows him to legally lock up the purchase contract.
So he now possesses a legally binding agreement to buy this house for $50,000. He hasn't bought the house. He owns the contract to buy the house.
Then he immediately turns around, puts an ad in the local paper, and offers to sell the house for $75,000.
A buyer comes along, sees it's still a good deal, and agrees to pay the $75,000. At closing, The new buyer's money pays the bank the $50,000 they are owed, and our author walks away with the remaining $25,000 as pure profit.
What you just described is a real estate strategy commonly known as wholesaling or contract assignment. What's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of the transaction. He didn't build the house, he didn't grab a hammer and fix the roof.
He didn't physically labor for 10,000 hours at a job to save that $25,000.
He didn't even truly risk his own capital for more than a few days, if at all. What he did was use his financial intelligence to spot a discrepancy in the market, a house that was fundamentally worth more than what a panicked bank was selling it for.
He used a piece of paper, a legal contract, to bridge that gap. He synthesized an opportunity. He literally invented $25,000 out of thin air, using nothing but his mind and an understanding of legal agreements.
No, I have to play the skeptic here. That sounds incredibly easy on paper, but what about the risk? What if he signs the contract to buy the house for $50,000 and he can't find a buyer? Doesn't he suddenly owe the bank $50,000? Isn't that a massive, potentially ruinous risk?
That is exactly the question a financially intelligent person asks, and the answer lies in the legal clauses of the contract. A skilled investor will include contingencies clauses that state the purchase is subject to inspection, or subject to securing financing, or subject to partner approval.
So if they cannot find a buyer to assign the contract to, they use the contingency to legally back out of the deal.
Exactly, losing only their small earnest money deposit, or sometimes nothing at all. The risk is heavily mitigated by legal knowledge. This is why the text emphasizes that investing isn't risky. Being uneducated is risky.
The text gives another example, this time in the stock market. Buying 100,000 shares of a private company at 25 cents a share right before it goes public. The company lists on the exchange, the market goes wild, the shares jump to $2 or $10 each, and suddenly a $25,000 initial investment is worth $1 million.
Again, inventing wealth through strategic positioning. But to do any of this, you need a specific toolkit. The source material breaks down this financial intelligence into 4 distinct pillars. If you want to invent money, you must master these 4 areas. Let's walk through them.
First, there is financial literacy. This is the bedrock. It is the ability to read numbers, to look at an income statement and a balance sheet, and understand the story the numbers are telling about cash flow. If you can't read the numbers, you are flying blind.
Second is investing strategies. This is the science of making money. It involves understanding different vehicles, how real estate works versus how paper assets like stocks work.
Third is the market. This is understanding human behavior, supply and demand. What do people want? What are they terrified of? And what are they willing to pay for?
And fourth is the law. As we discussed, this is utilizing corporate structures for tax advantages and employing contracts for protection from lawsuits and risk.
I want to take a quick detour and ELI 5 some of the financial instruments the text mentions when talking about investing strategies, because financial jargon can be incredibly alienating. For instance, the text mentions a REIT. What exactly is a REIT?
REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. Imagine a giant pie representing a massive commercial property, like a shopping mall or an apartment complex. Most normal people cannot afford to buy a whole shopping mall.
But a REIT allows a company to buy the mall and then slice the pie up into thousands of tiny pieces or shares.
You can buy a share of the REIT on the stock market just like you buy a share of Apple. By law, the REIT must pay out the vast majority of the rent it collects from the mall directly to the shareholders as dividends. It allows a beginner to own cash-flowing real estate without ever having to fix a toilet or deal with a tenant.
Brilliant. The text also mentions small-cap stocks. What are those?
CAP is short for market capitalization, which is simply the total value of all a company's shares. A small-cap stock is a relatively young or small company, usually valued between $250 million and $2 billion.
They are much riskier than buying a massive blue-chip company like Microsoft because they are less established and more volatile.
But if you do your research and find a small-cap company that is about to explode in growth, the potential for massive exponential returns is much higher. You are getting in closer to the ground floor.
And lastly, the text mentions CDs, or certificates of deposit, usually as a baseline for safe but low returns.
A CD is incredibly simple. It is basically a loan you give to the bank.
Yeah.
You give the bank $10,000 and you agree not to touch it for a set period, say 1 year or 5 years.
In exchange for locking up your money, the bank guarantees to pay you a fixed interest rate, which is higher than a normal savings account.
It is virtually risk-free because it is insured by the government, but the return is so low that it often barely keeps up with inflation. It is a parking spot for cash, not a wealth-building engine.
Thank you for clarifying those. It makes the text so much more approachable. Now, if you combine those four pillars, literacy, strategy, market law, you graduate from being a passive participant in the economy to being an active creator.
And the text makes a brilliant defining distinction here between two fundamentally different types of investors.
Yes, this is a core concept. Type 1 investors are those who buy packaged investments. They go to a retail broker, a financial planner, or they log onto an app and they buy a mutual fund off the shelf, or they buy a REIT, or a standard pre-diversified ETF.
It is clean, it is simple, and honestly, it is what the vast majority of responsible people do.
And to be clear, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? It's better than spending the money on a liability.
Absolutely. It is far superior to doing nothing. You will build wealth slowly over decades, but it is generally not how you achieve exponential life-altering wealth in a short time frame.
For that, you need to become a Type 2 investor. A Type 2 investor creates investments. They don't buy the prepackaged meal, they hunt for the ingredients and put the puzzle pieces together themselves.
Okay, here is an analogy that I think perfectly crystallizes this difference. Think about buying a computer. A Type 1 investor is like someone who walks into a big box electronics store, points at a shiny desktop computer on the shelf, and buys it.
It works fine, it does the job, but you are paying retail price, which includes a markup for the store, the manufacturer, and the shipping.
A Type 2 investor is like a hardcore tech geek. They don't buy the box. They buy the raw motherboard from one wholesale supplier in Taiwan. They buy the graphics card from another, the memory chips from someone else, and they build a custom super machine themselves on their kitchen table.
It requires significantly more technical knowledge, takes way more effort and time, but they end up with a machine that is twice as powerful for half the cost.
That is a phenomenal analogy. To be that Type 2 investor, the tech geek of finance, the text states you need to intentionally develop three specific high-level skills. First, you must learn how to find opportunities that everyone else misses.
You have to train yourself to see with your mind what others only see with their eyes. You look at a rundown building and see a cash-flowing duplex.
Second, you must learn how to raise capital without going to a traditional bank. If you let the phrase, "I don't have the money," stop you from doing a lucrative deal, you will never be a Type 2 investor. You have to learn how to structure deals, pitch investors, and use other people's money to fund your ideas.
And third, you must learn how to organize smart people. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, you shouldn't be. You need to hire people smarter than you. Brilliant tax lawyers, savvy accountants, aggressive brokers, and organize their expertise to serve your overarching vision.
Okay, my head is spinning a bit, in a good way.
Yeah.
We have covered the grand philosophy of the two dads. We define the psychological trap of the rat race. We know that cash-flowing assets are the holy grail.
We know we need to use corporations as defensive shields, and we know that ultimate exponential wealth comes from combining financial literacy with market knowledge to literally invent money through deals.
But let's bring this all the way down to earth.
Yes, the pragmatic boots-on-the-ground application.
Exactly. We are looking at the final stretch here. Escaping the matrix actionable steps for beginners. If someone is listening to this in their car right now, driving on their commute to a job they don't love, knowing they have a stack of bills waiting on the kitchen counter, how do they actually start today?
The source material is surprisingly generous with practical, beginner-friendly steps, distilling this massive abstract philosophy into daily, actionable habits. The very first step, predictably but crucially, is to invest in education first.
Because, as we established, your mind is your only true, indestructible asset.
Precisely. Before you buy a single stock, before you even look at Zillow for a piece of real estate, you must buy books, listen to deep dives like this one, attend seminars, and actively rewire your mindset.
The text points out a profound irony. People will gladly put a $3,000 vacation on a credit card without blinking, but they will balk at spending $300 on a financial seminar that could fundamentally alter their family's financial trajectory for generations.
You have to feed the asset between your ears before you try to feed your bank account.
Step 2 is about your environment. Choose friends carefully. And I want to be clear, this isn't about being a snob and cutting off your friends just because they aren't rich. It's about the undeniable power of association.
The text notes that you can learn just as much from your financially struggling friends about what not to do, watching how fear and desire dictate their choices, as you can learn from your wealthy friends about what to do.
But more importantly, it mentions the concept of proximity to information.
It used the provocative phrasing of legal insider trading, which simply means being close to the source of market information. Wealth is very often generated by knowing about a trend, a zoning change, or a new technology before the masses do.
If your social circle only talks about sports, celebrity gossip, or complaining about their middle management bosses, you are operating in an information vacuum. You aren't getting any valuable financial data.
You need to actively network and build friendships with people who are playing the game, who know where the market is moving, so you can analyze and act before the opportunity hits the front page of the newspaper and the margin is gone.
That makes total sense. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Step 3. Master a formula, then learn another.
The text bluntly calls working hard for money an obsolete caveman formula. You have to find a new recipe.
Maybe you decide to learn everything there is to know about buying foreclosures. You read the books, you find a mentor, you master that specific formula until it predictably generates cash. Then you don't stop.
You learn the formula for investing in small cap stocks. Then you learn how to buy self-storage units. You constantly upgrade the software of your mind with new, diversified ways to generate revenue.
Which leads directly to step 4. And I must warn you, this is arguably the most difficult psychological step in the entire book. It goes against every instinct of survival. Pay yourself first.
Oh man, this one is tough to swallow. I struggled with this when I first read it.
It requires immense, almost terrifying auto-discipline. The standard responsible financial advice we are all given is to pay your bills first, rent, utilities, credit cards, and then save whatever's left over at the end of the month.
The problem, as the text acutely notes, is that usually, because of human nature and Parkinson's law, there is absolutely nothing left over.
The rich dad philosophy completely inverts this mechanism. It dictates that even when you are short on cash, you take a set percentage of your income, say 10% or 20%, and you put it into your asset column before you pay your rent, before your mortgage, before your credit card bill.
But wait, let's play this out in reality. If I take my money and put it into an index fund first, and I don't have enough money left in my checking account to pay the electric bill or the Visa bill, the collectors are going to start calling.
They are going to threaten my credit score. This sounds like a recipe for a massive panic attack.
Exactly. It induces panic. And that is the entire brilliant point of the exercise.
Or what? The goal is panic.
The goal is pressure. The text explains that you use the intense, uncomfortable pressure of those angry creditors to force your financial genius to wake up.
Look at it this way. If you pay yourself last and you come up short, there is no pressure. You just sigh, say, oh, well, I guess I can't invest this month, and you accept defeat quietly. The pain is internal and easily ignored.
But if you pay yourself first, and suddenly you are $300 short for the electric bill, the pressure of the impending cutoff is external and acute. It forces you to get creative. You have to invent a way to generate that extra cash.
Your brain goes into overdrive. You might start a weekend side hustle. You might negotiate a better deal at work. You might find something in your garage to sell. The pressure acts as a crucible that builds your financial strength and resilience.
You absolutely do not ignore the bills, but you use the fear of the creditors to motivate you to expand your income rather than just passively shrinking your investments.
That is a terrifying but utterly brilliant reframing. It's like intentionally creating a localized crisis to force yourself to grow. I love it, even if it scares me. Okay, step 5 is about assessing investments. The source uses a phrase I want to modernize. It's all about focusing heavily on ROI, or return on investment, specifically the concept of getting your seed money back.
Yes, the core question of the sophisticated Type 2 investor is never just, how much will this make? The first question is always, how fast do I get my initial at-risk money back? And the second question is, what do I get to keep for free after I get my money out?
The example makes this beautifully clear. Let's say an investor buys a rental property. They put down $20,000 of their own money. They rent it out, and the cash flow is strong. Within 3 years, the net profit from the rental income equals $20,000.
They have completely recouped their initial down payment, so they take that $20,000 and put it back in their pocket to invest in something else.
But here is the magic. They still own the property, and that property continues to generate cash flow every single month. Because their initial capital is no longer tied up, that property is now essentially infinite return. It is pure asset.
You always want to look for deals where you can pull your initial capital out as quickly as possible while maintaining ownership of the cash-flowing asset.
Step 6 is absolutely crucial for mental resilience in today's media environment. Overcome the Chicken Little syndrome. The world, and especially the financial news media, is full of cynics who are constantly screaming that the sky is falling.
They say the stock market is about to crash, real estate is a massive bubble, inflation will destroy us all. The text makes a beautiful, penetrating distinction. Cynics criticize, but winners analyze.
Yes, there's a great story. A guy tells his friend about a great, slightly higher risk investment yielding 16%. The friend is terrified. The next day, the terrified friend sends him a massive article outlining all the reasons why that specific investment is dangerous and bound to fail.
The friend let the fear presented in the article completely blind him. He didn't analyze the actual risk, he just absorbed the panic.
As the text says, doubt and fear create the cynic. The cynic lets their mind close to protect themselves, while the winner analyzes the situation to see if the fear is mathematically justified or if the panic is actually masking a lucrative opportunity that everyone else is running away from.
This ties into what the text affectionately calls the Texan mindset. Texans live big. When they win big. And when they fail spectacularly. But they do not hide from failure. They use it. They remember the Alamo.
They use catastrophic failure as fuel to get smarter and stronger. Most people in the middle class are completely paralyzed by the fear of losing money. They build their entire financial lives around avoiding loss. They are playing the game not to lose.
But the wealthy play the game to win. And playing to win means accepting that failure, and losing money occasionally is a necessary, highly instructive part of the process. If you are terrified of losing $1, you will only ever seek the suffocating safety of the rat race.
And the final step, step 7, is a bit unexpected for a hard-nosed finance book. Teach, and you shall receive, the principle of giving.
It is the spiritual, almost karmic component of the philosophy. The text argues that whenever you feel short of something in your life, whether it is money, love, friendship, or business contacts, you should give that exact thing away first.
It sounds paradoxical, especially when you are broke. But both the poor dad and the rich dad believed in giving. The fundamental difference was the execution.
The poor dad gave his time and his knowledge freely, but he always said he would only give money to charity when he had extra, which, because of the rat race, was never.
The rich dad, on the other hand, gave money to charities and his church regularly, even when he was struggling with cash flow, believing that you have to prime the pump. You had to give money to signal to the universe and to yourself that you operate from a place of abundance, not scarcity.
It's the idea that the world is a mirror. If you want a smile, you have to give a smile. If you want financial opportunities, help someone else find a financial opportunity without expecting a direct cut, and suddenly, almost miraculously, opportunities will start appearing for you. It shifts your brain from hoarding to flowing.
So if we synthesize this entire massive journey we've been on today,
Let's do it. We started at the kitchen table with two dads, two vastly different worldviews fighting for the mind of a young boy. We unpack the harsh, exhausting reality of the rat race, driven by the twin engines of fear and desire.
we defined what true assets and liabilities are, stripping away the complex accounting jargon to a ruthlessly simple rule of cash flow. Does it feed you or does it eat? We explored how the rich use the legal shields of corporations to minimize their tax burden and protect their wealth.
We looked at the ultimate superpower of the wealthy, the ability to use financial intelligence, contracts, and market knowledge to literally invent money out of thin air, synthesizing deals out of market discrepancies rather than just slowly saving pennies from a W-2 paycheck.
And finally, we laid out the daily disciplines: educating yourself, paying yourself first to force growth, managing risk needed to actually break free from the cycle.
And the ultimate relevance of this to you, the listener, cannot be overstated. Financial freedom is not about getting a lucky lottery ticket. It is not about waiting for a magical inheritance or a savior. It is entirely about changing your daily, seemingly insignificant choices.
Every single time a dollar enters your hand, you decide in that exact precise moment whether you are buying a liability to look rich to your neighbors or whether you are buying an asset to actually be rich. Your financial future is being written right now in those tiny, everyday transactions.
I want to leave you with a final challenge to mull over this week as you go about your life. We talked at the very beginning about how the phrase, "I can't afford it," is like turning off the engine of your brain.
The text goes a step further and states that "I can't afford it" is actually a lie. And deep down, your spirit knows it's a lie. It is a surrender to intellectual laziness.
It is the active avoidance of the mental work required to figure out a complex solution.
Exactly. So here is the provocative thought I want you to take with you. The next time you face a financial hurdle this week, maybe it's an investment course you know you need to take, or a small piece of real estate you want to investigate, or even just a meaningful experience you want to give your family, Instead of shutting down your brain and killing the dream with the lazy statement, I can't afford it, force yourself to ask the question, how can I
We
afford
should
it?
step on the
Step on
gas.
the gas. See what your brain invents. You might be completely shocked by the genius that is just lying dormant inside your own head, waiting for you to finally ask the right question. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the rules, keep challenging the narratives you've been handed, and keep diving deep